And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. I'm your host Dan, aka smAsho. We've got some interesting footage once again today. An insane sun-diving comet. We'll get up close and perhaps personal with the SDO. And stargaze. Mainly at this star, otherwise known as the Sun. Here it is in three wavelengths. 211 angstroms, 304 angstroms, and 335 angstroms. Sunspot setting in the southwest, rising in the southeast. We've got some incredible close-ups, as well as a sun-diving comet. We'll get to it. Here's the magnetogram plus 171 angstroms. So let's take a look at what's going on out from Lagrange point 5. And I couldn't believe this one when I saw it. Check it out. Looks like a significant comet there, diving into the sun and then probably disintegrating. As we see no hint of it emerging from outside the back part of the disk. Here's the difference image, which is going to show you something similarly. Crazy sun-diving comet there. One of those things that if you don't look, you just might not see it. Coming out of nowhere. Yowzers. That is, again, Lagrange point 5, where stereo A is. Let's look at the radio flux from the sun. Well, it's dipped down to 77 solar flux units. And there it is. You can see the one-year chart hovering just below 80 solar flux units. It's this black line right here. And the radio flux is a measurement of the radio output, excuse me, of the outer solar corona. And just bear with me a minute, we are streaming live. I get to the next slide, which is HelioViewer. We've got some great HelioViewer movies as always. Here is 304 angstroms in full disk. We did see a B-class X-ray flare also. Happened yesterday around, I think it was around 1820. Don't quote me on that. We'll get to it. And we've got a bunch of wavelengths in close-up of Sunspot 2797. That's what you see in the lower left. Just rising over the southeastern portion of the solar disk, it's Sunspot 2797, which is a returning sunspot. Ahead of that, coronal hole, and you can see a north and south pole-oriented coronal hole. NOAA has upped the forecast a little bit. We're expecting a KP of 4 at the end of the day today, Universal Time. Apparently, NOAA has started agreeing with me about the incoming coronal hole wind stream. And here's the rising of Sunspot 2797 in 1700 angstroms. This has actually become a beta-class sunspot now. We see trailing umbrae of opposite polarity, increasing the probability of large solar flares. Perhaps an M-class flare could be associated with this at this point. Don't be surprised to see it. C-class flares even more likely than that. As again, we've got opposite polarity trailing umbrae. And we'll show the North Pole coronal hole region as well before we move on to talk about social media and so on. Have you been evaporating from social media? Have you been outright banned, shadow banned, hacked, frauded, and generally annoyed by social media? Well, it's certainly been a thing for us. And it's part of the subject matter that we regularly cover in our Smashlights segments. You may find them at youtube.com/smashomash/playlists, as we do lots more than daily space weather. By the way, thanks to our Twitch viewers, we are currently streaming this video live. It's twitch.tv/smashomash. Twitch.tv/smashomash. Also, we're on Twitter, all over social media. The official Twitter account of the Smash News Network is indeed twitter.com/SmashoMash. Everything is just at SmashoMash all over the internet. And we've only got 115 followers over on Twitter, despite having over 4,500 tweets. I've got too many windows open. Also, you're cordially invited to visit smashomash.com. You can find all of our social media there, our VoIP number, as well as our email address, and our stores. Today's featured item is the Mansa shirt in purple, a totally nonpartisan shirt, telling you that it's up to you to make America not suck again. The inference here is that it's not the government's job to make America not suck. It's your job as the denizens of the country. It's also got our website, smashomash.org, on there. So yeah, Mansa. Make sure you Mansa, folks. Because again, it is up to you. And here at the Smash News Network, we believe in things like accountability. And since the year 2021 is going to be a year of accountability, be accountable. Tell your friends and your foes to Mansa and make America not suck again. Also, please take a moment to press like and subscribe if you're viewing the videos on YouTube. If you're on BitChute, leave us a nice comment or perhaps a mean comment. But certainly on YouTube, press the share button, press the notification bell to be notified when we put up content. Otherwise, you may not know. And don't forget to watch our highly underviewed smashomash.org Presents playlist and our other playlists, such as the brand new Smash Holes of the Week, which only has one episode, episode 00001, COVIDiots. Thanks again to our BitChute users and so on. Let's do a cosmology segment, but before we do that, let's thank our patrons, the true source of funding for the content, patreon.com/SmashoMash. Please consider funding us, as we need a lot more funding to accomplish what we want in the year 2021, as there's a lot of accountability to be held by a lot of liable parties. Next, we're going to roll a quantum random number, otherwise known as a quantum random number. Today's quantum random number is 305. We're going to go to the Neil Gorell Swift-Bat X-ray Observatory and see that it's LQ Hya, a BY Draconid variable, which is some kind of X-ray emitting star. There is the transient X-ray output from LQ Hya. And let's see if it'll show up on Sinbad. We'll get a visual of this object, and there it is. Some kind of variable. I don't know exactly what. Could it be a binary? It looks like there's certainly a star very close to it. Could be in the foreground, could be in the background. Let's check it out on the 2MASS, the infrared light. And there it is on infrared. Does it show up on Chandra? How about the XMM Newton? It does show up on the X-ray Multi-Mirror Project. There it is on XMM Newton. A great starburst-like pattern from VLQ Hya. If you want to go higher, let's talk about the Socialistichskaya Industria, an organization put together by the Soviet Union. Now, this is one of the many, many documents on the Black Vault. This is C055162220.pdf, which I just pretty much randomly selected. And check it out. The Soviets created an entity called, in 1989, called Socialistichskaya Industria, which referred many reports of UFO sightings. It was an organization specifically for the Soviet Union to investigate UFO phenomena. We'll check out this little story. On September 30th, 1989, there was some documentation. Soviet aircraft reported seeing a large flying disc in their vicinity with 5 beams of light emanating from it, 3 pointed down, 2 pointed up. At this time, the ground controller instructed one of the planes to alter its course and approach the object, at which point the disc flew to the same level and aimed one of its beams at the approaching Soviet plane, illuminating the cockpit. Listratov cited the pilot's log as stating, "At this time, the co-pilot was at the controls. He observed the maneuver that the object had just carried out and was able to raise his hand to shield himself from the unbearable light. The aircraft commander was resting in the adjoining seat, and a bright ray of light projecting a spot with a diameter of 20 centimeters passed across his body. Both pilots felt heat. According to Listratov, the aircraft commander and his co-pilot both became, quote, invalids, end quote. Shortly after the incident, the co-pilot was forced to leave his job due to a sudden deterioration in his health, including the onset of sudden prolonged periods of, quote, loss of consciousness, end quote. The aircraft commander died within a few months. The cause of death was listed as, quote, cancer, end quote, and, quote, injury to the organism as a result of radiation from an unidentified flying object was listed as a contributing factor on the official medical record in the hospital where the commander died, according to Listratov. If you want to find more of these, head to theblackvault.com. They've got the entire data dump there, and as you can see, there are interesting stories, and I guess a UFO story counts. As a cosmology segment, it's time for me to vanish before indeed the truth does. It's out there, and we're putting together analyses of it. It's part of the reason why the channel exists. Let's get back to solar data. The solar wind data has been acting funky, as it's not showing us these low readings. It keeps showing 14.04 protons per cubic centimeter for the density, but we can see it's clearly below 10 here. It's probably more like 5 protons per cubic centimeter, as that is a magnitudinal graph, folks, as it goes from 1 to 10 and then to 100, not a linear graph. In any case, we see a solar wind below 10 protons per cubic centimeter, having just dropped down from around 14. And we see a slightly raised coronal hole wind, and it's showing it at 334, even though the graph doesn't go to 334. Not sure what's going on with that. I'll press refresh just for the sake of you, the viewer. And all we've accomplished there is having the BT, BZ, and phi angle planes mysteriously vanish. So, before we have anything else mysteriously vanish, we can see that we had a solar wind speed as low as 275 kilometers per second throughout the day yesterday. Incredibly low solar wind speeds. And it looks like this is the onset of a pretty weak coronal hole wind stream here. We're expecting to see the solar wind speed continue to rise. And here's the KP index, a measurement of global geomagnetism, currently at 2. Next, we'll look at geospace magnetosphere movies. Here's 4 hours of data, including the proton density. You can see up there it says P/cm cubed. That means protons per cubic centimeter. Keep in mind this only shows 0 to 4, and it's showing low density in white, high density in dark blue. We'll also check out the pressure as we show this daily. It's 4 hours of data. And there you can see that drop off in the density projected as pressure. Having occurred around 9 o'clock Universal Time. Next, we'll look at ground magnetic perturbations, since there is a polar excursion happening. And we see some magnetic pulses here out of the Pacific Ocean, mainly emanating out of the south solar polar region, south earthly polar region, rather. And we see some magnetic activity over the, I should say, under the both north geomagnetic poles there. And we're going to cover more magnetic stuff. First, the proton flux has been flatlined. No coronal mass ejections striking the GOES 16. Here's the X-ray flux, and you can see that flare which happened at around 1310 yesterday. Small B-class solar flare, probably coming out of Sunspot 2797. And there's the GOES magnetometer for the past 3 days. Small arc jet moment in there, where the GOES 16 must have used its thrusters. Here is the top view ecliptic plane field plot. It's showing you the polarity of the current sheet. North pole polarity in green, south polarity in red. And the Earth has made the move into the South Pole current sheet. Don't be surprised to see it snap back into the North Pole current sheet, as that sunspot in the south is pretty large. Although there are coronal holes involved as well, and you can see the Earth's potential field surface source line there in orange, just having connected into the South Pole area, shown in red. Keep in mind the data is 1.5 hours old. And the magnetic environment can suddenly change. We don't see any major changes in the B field shown here in blue as a result of that sunspot. And you can see coronal holes there in red and green. And this one also shows you the solar magnetogram. Again, no major changes in the B field despite a large sunspot, 2797, having rotated in. And here is the potential field surface source plot of the sun's atmosphere, the corona. And here's me drinking some spicy cafe mocha. What's in your coffee? In mine is cayenne pepper and cocoa powder. Yes, it's an athletic hack, folks. It's an athletic hack. Cayenne pepper, one of the superest of foods, as well as cocoa, which, like nose breathing, increases your nitric oxide content and hence your cellular oxygenation. Next, looking at in-the-sky.org for a sky chart. No planets or moon visible on the ecliptic from my location. If you want to make yourself a sky chart, just put in your location and it'll generate. You can even actually animate it. Check it out. I'll animate the sky chart, show you when Venus rises. And here in eastern PA, we expect Venus to rise at around 6:40 a.m. If you're up before dawn, you may see the third brightest object. This one right here. What the heck? Epic Pen is koofed. Epic Pen, you are out of here. Epic Pen, you're fired. Okay. You're fired. We download your free software in order to be able to show things on the screen. And if you're unable to show things on the screen, you're fired. We'll make you vanish. Okay? Here's what's going on in the solar system. There's where things will be in a week, as Mercury swings around to make another pass. Next, we'll talk electrons. Here is the charging situation. No charging hazards. Low levels of electron flux. There's the 1-year chart. Here is the forecast, and this is forecasted as a result of the incoming coronal hole wind stream. And again, we are expecting to see possibly up to a KP4, some geomagnetic unrest from the incoming proton stream from the coronal hole wind that we've been forecasting for a couple days. Expecting that certainly within the next 24 hours. It looks like the density has already dropped off, which means we can expect the velocity to increase. And there's the electron flux over the past 3 days. Here's just a diagram of the atmosphere, different levels, the troposphere where your weather occurs, as well as the F ionosphere layer there, up around 300 kilometers where the GOES 16 makes its measurements. And so basically what we're looking at here is the inner Van Allen belt, and your GPS satellite is located in between the Van Allen belts. And we see significant electron flux anomalies here, especially in the southern hemisphere. I'll let it play through a second time there. This will show you where GPS errors will be located, and you can expect some in especially the eastern U.S. as well, despite it being winter in the northern hemisphere. So what we're talking about here is there's a diagram of that. You can see the inner Van Allen belt, the GPS satellite locations in the outer Van Allen belt, and the locations of things like low Earth orbits, which is where you would want to be if you went into space at the International Space Station. Here is the ionosphere map, and we see once again anomalies in the southern hemisphere, some highly charged up ionosphere. And that's sort of normal. We see lots of this when we see the electrons getting out of whack as a result of low electron flux levels. Here is the latest image. That red discharge zone in the northern hemisphere is not as abnormal as the charge-up zones in the south. There's the current image, that one coming at 9 o'clock Universal Time. Let's talk volcanoes. I don't think I mentioned Etna yesterday, by the way, which Etna's been showing some activity. Check it out at volcanodiscovery.com if you like. Today's list includes Sakurajima, although volcanic ash is not identifiable in satellite imagery. Not observed. No volcanic ash observed coming from Popocatépetl either, although Fuego is exploding. 15,000-foot ash plume there. Sangay not observed. Could be erupting, but not observed in satellite imagery. Could be cloudy. Revenador is exploding. 15,000-foot ash plume above that in Ecuador, and Sabancaya exploding. 25,000-foot ash plume above it in Peru. Please do not attempt to do the triple Lindy as featured in the Rodney Dangerfield movie Back to School over the caldera. Next, looking at the past 24 of earthquakes, and we don't see any major earthquakes. So we're going to scroll up the list citing anything out of the ordinary. And there is one in the deep South Atlantic. There's a deep quake in the western portion of South America, followed by another one only about 20 seconds later. Check it out, 12:24 at 7 seconds, 12:24 at 32 seconds. So two deep quakes happening close together at a similar magnitude. And then only a half an hour later, a 4.5 strikes Fiji at 555 kilometers on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. So again, no major quakes, nothing over a 6 magnitude. A 7, 8, and 9 magnitude earthquake drought continues. Here's a 4.5 near Vanuatu at 150 kilometers. A 5.4 in the South Sandwich Islands, and that is the largest of the past 24. Also a deep quake. Depth listed at 117 kilometers for that. Here's a 2.9 striking California at 200 meters above sea level. And we've seen some southeast of Mono Lake. This one's actually west of Clear Lake. North of Parsons Creek. South of Red Mountain. That quake occurring at, again, 200 meters above sea level. Some more deep quakes, such as this one here in the Kuril Islands, south of Kamchatka. This 4.5 in western South America at Argentina. A 4.8 at Russia. So it's a significant deep quake event, just no large quakes. And many of those quakes would be much larger if they happened at the surface. Here's one that just came in about an hour and a half ago, a 5.3 at Vanuatu at over 160 kilometers. So it's a deep quake event, I guess you could say. And here's what's going on in the jet streams. We're going into the meteorology realm now. The jet streams of the eastern world shown here. Note the jet stream blowing backwards over the western Pacific and the Indian Ocean. Here are the jet streams of the western world. Extreme meridional jet stream flow over the North Atlantic, where it's all over the place. And we've got a doubled up jet stream here over Mexico. Extreme cold air still being funneled into the northern Rockies, for example. Some cold temperatures expected at places like Montana and Idaho. Here is the GOES lightning mapper. And we don't see a lot of lightning. Let's check a real-time lightning map. And we saw most of the lightning lined up here over the equator over the past, I think it's about 6 hours. Anyway, not a lot of lightning, but most of it right near the equator. Here is the U.S. Doppler radar map, and we see snow showers all over the northern half of the country. Next, we'll look at pressure. We've got a very strong and concentrated pressure system south of Alaska here, as well as a high pressure system over southern British Columbia. We'll let this advance. This is the Euro forecast. We'll move this till tomorrow at about noon. And if you're wondering where we're located in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. So there's the Euro forecast for tomorrow at noon. Strong low over northwestern Canada as well. And there's the GFS forecast. A series of low pressure systems there forming in the North Pacific. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different low pressure systems, including a quite strong one just east of the Kamchatka Peninsula. And let me just check the life of the stream here. It looks like it's just fine. We'll move on to even more meteorological stuff. How about satellite imagery of the cloud layer over the U.S.? Low clouds still here over the North Atlantic especially. Here's a water vapor map for the same area. Dry air sweeping across Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia into South Carolina. Clear skies over those areas. Please leave a comment if anybody else is forecasting clear skies, as precipitation is typically what people show. We've got bonus segments. Here come the bonus features. It's the colorized magnetogram of the sun. Let's check out Sunspot 2796. It's looking like it's completely gone. Just in time for Sunspot 2797 to rise. There it is. And again, I don't think I see any umbre out here. Looks like 2796 has left the solar system. But there's Sunspot 2797, and I see trailing umbre. See those dark spots? Those are opposite polarity umbre. So this is a B-class solar flare. You can see a great example of a light bridge going across there where the umbre is split on the leading sunspot. Great view of that. There's the colorized magnetogram. There's the intensitygram. So again, the possibility of significant solar flares, possibly an M-class flare coming, has gone up as a result of that being a beta-class sunspot. So here are some close-ups of it. First, 193 angstroms. And you can see there's a coronal hole leading that sunspot. Leave us a comment if you think there's a relationship between coronal holes and sunspots. Let us know what you think the relationship is, as it seems to be pretty important with things like determining the cause of the solar cycles, something that Mr. Bagashev and I are working on. Here is the 94 angstroms close-up. This is another one of the iron emission spectra states. 94 angstroms. This one takes 10 images per minute. Great view of that. And expect more videos coming out about Sunspot 2797, as it's showing spectacular filamentary behavior like this in 304 angstroms. I do see a filament here ahead of this coronal hole, right here. But there's not a whole lot of plasma suspended out in the corona right now between the Earth and the Sun. That one is pretty modestly close to the chromosphere. And here's 171 angstroms. I think we've got one more, 131 angstroms. Great view of 2797. And that's all she wrote, folks. We are out. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, stare at the sun. Don't drink it. If you do, don't drive. Certainly don't drive. No matter how much the government drives you to drink, don't drive. Welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Please visit our links. And since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back.